have a layout where I could see other people rather than myself?
Yes, you could go in for a tiled layout, Shauna ma'am.
Yeah, that's
Press
what I'm
on
trying
the
to do. I've got the 3 dots, and it says
right
presenter
click
home
on that.
report from, but it doesn't say layout.
No, when you
That's what I
press
was
on the
trying to
3
find.
dots, you
Yeah.
will get a sidebar open, and that sidebar has an option which says change layout. When you press on the 3
Demo
dots,
time.
you
I'm
press
not getting
on
that option.
Okay, I'll just share my screen with you so that maybe you can see. When you
Okay.
press on the 3 dots, did you
Yeah.
get it? A tab opens for you, and the tab has an option which says change layout. Did
No,
you
it
get
doesn't. No, it doesn't have that option. So
Okay.
that's my problem. Yeah. I'm on a phone. Should I go on to the computer?
If it's possible, maybe.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's fine for us. If it's not inconvenient for you, it's fine for us.
Okay. Then if it's fine for you, if you can see me, that's okay.
Yes, we can see you perfectly and we can hear you perfectly.
All
It's
right.
all right.
Fine.
Take the trouble.
All right. Go ahead then.
Yes. So, yes, sir, can we begin?
Yes,
Riaz
please.
sir has come.
Riaz sir is not yet here. Welcome, Preeti Bala ma'am. Welcome, Oshmi. Welcome, Krishna.
मेरे पास यहाँ पे फोन नहीं है. Saket, if you can call Riaz sir.
Thank you, Vasu.
Yes, sir. I'm calling, sir.
Mumbai Yakub ma'am, welcome. So for all those people who have just come in, we already have the inimitable, the awesome Shauna Singh Baldwin with us already. And it's a pride and privilege, not just for our college, but I think for this entire state. She has been a source of pride for our country. She has represented India. She's one of the leading Indian English writers writing from the diaspora today. And we cannot thank you enough, Shauna ma'am, for giving us this privilege of having you with us today. All thanks to Yaya sir for arranging this entire session. We had always wanted something like this, and unfortunately, this lockdown comes in, and we find that there's an opportunity even during the lockdown when people are free and we can meet them. So thank you so much for being here today.
Very welcome.
Yes, sir, I think we should begin.
Riaz sir is here.
Not yet.
Saket is calling him.
Sir, he's joining, sir.
Okay.
I think you have a minute or so before the actual time to start. So
Yes, actually, our principal, he wanted to greet you officially. So he's just joining in a minute. So we'll be recording this entire session and we'll have this recording up on YouTube. We are recording it.
Okay, wonderful.
We'll have it up on YouTube and we'll share the link with everybody. Riaz sir is here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, Riaz.
Good morning, sir.
Morning,
Good
sir.
morning to all.
Almost on time.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, ma'am. Let us begin now. Respected guests, the speaker for today, Shauna Singh Baldwin, our principal, Dr. Mohammed Riaz sir, all the faculty members joining from different colleges and universities from the country, and the students, research scholars, all. A very warm welcome from our side. We have started a new series online, and we have named it Writers Beyond Distance, through which we are trying to reach the writers, and through which we are trying to reach you, trying to make a bridge between all of us. And this is basically a time when we need this kind of bridging a lot. So here we have the Shauna Singh Baldwin. She'll be talking with us, and we have named this session as "In the World: Books, Places, and Music." She will actually read out from her selected text. She will talk with us. She will converse with us. We welcome her with the deep core of our heart. We welcome our principal also of our college, and we welcome all of you, all the faculty here. Uh, Before we go ahead, let us now request our principal sir to a warm extend warm welcome to our speaker, Dr. Mohammed Azhar.
Okay, thank you very much, Yahya Ibrahim sir. First of all, good morning to all. Honorable Speaker, Shauna Singh Baldwin, all all faculty members, literature lovers, and also dear students. Being the head of the institution, it is my extreme pride, privilege, and honor to welcome distinguished Speaker Shauna Singh Baldwin, who is a scholar of international repute, author of various novels, short stories, and loved all over the world. Her presence today amongst is a matter of immense pride, not only for the Department of English, but also for Karim City College, for Jamshedpur, and for Jharkhand as a whole. Her sharing of knowledge and wisdom with our student is highly fortunate on our part and shall help to inspire them a lot in their journey as a scholar and writer. I am grateful to Dr. S.M. Yahya Ibrahim and his department colleagues, Dr. Neha Tiwari, Dr. Basudra Roy, Professor A.K. Das, Professor Saket Kumar, for inviting Shauna Singh Baldwin and giving us an opportunity to listen to her valuable discourse. I am also welcome to all my faculty members of Karim City College who have joined with us. And today I am very welcome to all my beloved students who they are listening the lecture of world famous author. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, I request our departmental colleague, Dr. Basudhara Roy, to carry forward the session. Please, Dr. Basudhara. Basudhara, your voice is not coming. Basudhara, unmute.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So thank you, Riaz sir, for introducing Shauna ma'am and for formally welcoming her to us. Shauna ma'am does not need an introduction. Basically, she is someone whom the world throughout knows. And but for your generosity, ma'am, it would have been impossible for us to have you here today. So thank you so much for being with us. And in a way, I think that I would now like to hand over the session to you so that you could talk about, yourself. And I allow you, I'm there with you, and I allow you, to take this up and also to, enlighten us with some of your valuable readings today. So we look forward to this. Ma'am, over to you.
Well, thank you. I can't see myself anymore for some reason. So.
But yes, you're visible. You're visible and audible. Perfect.
All right, that's good. Well, thank you so much for a very generous introduction. It's very, very kind of you. I, when we talked about this, Dr. Ibrahim and myself, I thought to myself, what would you like to hear about? And I know that you study literature and everything, and I'm not a great authority on literature so much as I'm a writer, a creative writer. And so, what I'd like to talk to you about today is dreaming. I'd like to talk to you about dreaming because we all dream. Dreams are where our conscious and subconscious selves meet, commune, and process the events of the day. Dreams are that safe space where our minds and spirits map out the body's strategy for tomorrow. When we dream, we conjure up scary images, loved ones, and memories, giving them symbolic existence and voices. So, dreaming to me is a really, really important way to enter the creative spirit. So, dreams are for me and for many writers I know where meaning forms into images that can be named with nouns and described with adjectives. And as you know, you can do your dreaming asleep or awake. When you do it during the day, it's called daydreaming. And it's that twilight space where I can think about who my characters are and get to know them deeply and intimately. In daydreaming, I can ask them questions aloud about where they are, how they got there, and where they are hurt or broken. Not to judge them or to fix their problems, but to describe and explain their options and behavior. So dreaming helps me create a different consciousness for each character. So this is all preparation. This is all part of the creative process. And then what happens is my inner critic comes in and says, hey, that story's been written and told before, or that's boring, or who's going to care about these characters? And who do you think you are, Shakespeare? So at that point, I have to quell the inner critic and say, it's my job to describe people who experience and cope with their problems in creative ways. Those people can be Desis, Europeans, Americans, Desi Americans, Canadians, Indo-Canadians. They can be Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jewish or Buddhist. They can be experiencing events in my lifetime or in the past or in the future. If I can research and interview enough, I can imagine their feelings, beliefs, and actions, and then I can write their stories. So I think about telling a story only I can tell about people I love, and in a way that I hope only I could say. And if it's been told before, that's okay. I just hope to tell it with more empathy and hopefully better research. Actors do this all the time. We writers only have to act on the page and play all the characters. I'm going to read to you from a passage that began as a dream and turned into a short story. This is from English Lessons. I don't know if you can see the cover, but this is from English Lessons and Other Stories. And it's a story called Montreal, 1962. In the dark at night, you came close, and your voice was a whisper, though there is no one here to wake. They said I could have the job if I take off my turban and cut my hair short. You did not have to say it. I saw it in your face as you took off your new coat and galoshes. I heard their voices in my head as I looked at the small white envelopes I have left in the drawer, each full of one more day's precious dollars, the last of your savings and my dowry. Mentally, I converted dollars to rupees and thought how many people in India each envelope could feed for a month. This was not how they described emigrating to Canada. I still remember them saying to you, "You're a well-qualified man. We need professional people." And they talked about freedom and opportunity for those lucky enough to already speak English. No one said then, "You must be reborn, white-skinned, and clean-shaven to show it, to survive." Just a few months ago, they called us exotic new Canadians, new blood to build a new country. Today, I took one of my wedding saris to the neighborhood dry cleaner, and a woman with no eyebrows held it like a dish rag as she asked me, "Is it a bed sheet?" "No," I said. "Curtains?" "No," I said. I took the silk back to our basement apartment, tied my hair in a tight bun, washed the heavy folds in the metal bathtub, and hung it, gold threads glinting, on a drip-dry hanger. When I had finished, I spread a bed sheet on the floor of the bathroom, filled my arms with the turbans you'd worn last week, and knelt there, surrounded by the empty, soft hollows of scarlet, navy, earth brown, copper, saffron, mauve, and bright parrot green. As I waited for the bathtub to fill with warm, soapy water, I unraveled each turban, each precise spiral you had worn round your head, and soon the room was full of soft streams of muslin that had protected your long black hair. I placed each turban in turn on the bubbly surface and watched them grow dark and heavy, sinking slowly, softly into the warmth. When there were no more left beside me, I leaned close and reached in, working each one in a rhythm bone deep, as my mother and hers must have done before me, that their men might face the world proud. I drained the tub, and new flowers, new colors swelled, deep red, dark black mud, rust, orange, soft purple, and jade green. I filled the enamel sink with clean water and starch and lifted them as someday I will lift children. When the milky bowl had fed them, my hands massaged them free of alien red-blue water. I placed them carefully in a basin and took them out into our gray 2 rooms to dry. That's just a little excerpt from English Lessons and Other Stories, and it's a story called Montreal 1962. So you can read the rest of the story if you like. But I just wanted to give you a sense of that, imagining that whole idea of slowing down the world so that you can imagine her washing the turbans, putting them in the water, and seeing as the colors change. I just wanted you to see that in your mind's eye, just as I saw it in my mind's eye when I was dreaming it, right? Now, as you may know, I'm a second generation Desi who was born in Canada and grew up in India. So you might think it odd that my first novel was set in Pakistan, a place I'd never visited. But you know, living in India, how that border between India and Pakistan and the border between India and what is now Bangladesh was created by the stroke of a Britisher's pen. Partition casts a very long shadow over all our lives to this day. My grandparents on my mother's side were from Rawalpindi, and they fled Lahore to Delhi during the partition. So what the body remembers is based on my Nani's story. When I began writing it, I was appalled by my own ignorance of my Nani's life, about her beliefs as a Sikh, about Sikhism itself, about history. But there's nothing like writing a story to help you learn. So here's how it begins, and I'll give you a reading from What the Body Remembers, just a short reading. This is from chapter 1 in What the Body Remembers. I'm just going to read you a little bit so you can see the difference between something like Montreal 1962 and then writing about two women in a polygamous marriage in colonial India. This is Rawalpindi, Undivided India, 1937. Satya's
Ma'am, I'm
heart.
sorry to say, but your story is so boring.
I'm sorry. Is the story too boring for you?
Interesting.
Probably that guy, didn't read
Did we
properly.
get bombed?
I
Yeah.
would request the participants to kindly mute yourselves. You're not allowed to talk unless we give you an opportunity to talk, right? So we are having a very, very interesting, warm story reading session, which is something that not all of you may connect with. So because we have kept this meeting open, we have people from all over, and we do not know whom we are admitting. So
Yeah, that's okay.
you will be removed
Well,
unless you're
if it's boring,
keep
you're
quiet.
quite welcome to leave. So no problem. But to
Not
me,
at
this is
all, not at
interesting.
all, Shauna ma'am. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's
But
wonderful. We
anyway,
are having the time of our life.
well, to carry on, this is in 1937. So it's a little bit different, and you might enjoy this more than the last one. Satya's heart is black and dense as a stone within her. She tells herself she pities Roop, but hears laughter answering her. How difficult it is to deceive yourself when you have known yourself a full 42 years. She has a servant summon Roop to her sitting room in the afternoon when Sadarji has gone to a canal engineer's meeting. When she comes before her, Satya does not speak, but rises from the divan and takes Roop's chunni from her shoulders as if in welcome, so she can study the girl. She takes Roop's chin and raises her face to the afternoon sun, willing it to blind her, but it will do her no such service. She studies Roop's features, her patwari skin, smooth as a new apricot beckoning from the limb of a tall tree, her wide, heavily lashed brown eyes. Unlike Satya's grey ones, they are demurely lowered, innocent. A man could tell those eyes anything, and they would believe him. A man could kiss those red lips for hours, and they would look fuller and more luscious for the bruising. Roop's hair is long to her thighs, softened by amla and scented with coconut. Unlike Satya's, it has no need yet for henna. Satya lifts Roop's plait around her shoulder and examines the tip. Too few split ends. It has felt the scissors once at least, if not more. Roop is a new Sikh then, an uncomprehending carrier of the orthodoxy resurging in them all. Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, they are like the three strands of her hair, a strong rope against the British, but separate, nevertheless. She unbinds Roop's hair. It falls, a moonlit river, down the valley of her spine. She examines Roop's teeth and finds all of them whole, the back ones barely visible. She hopes as they come they will bring pain. Roop's tongue is soft and a healthy pink, and from it a man will hear no truths he cannot explain away. She presses her fingers to Roop's cheekbones. They are high like her own. Some remnant of Afghan blood in their past. In other circumstances, she might have been Roop's aunt or cousin. Satya's hands drop to Roop's neck and encircle it lightly, for she is not trying to frighten her. And she sees Sadarji has given her a kantha necklace, one of her own. She knows the gold of this one well. She ordered it from the goldsmith herself. She knows every link in it and the sheen of its red enamel. She wore it last to a party full of Europeans. Its brilliance and its weight had comforted her. Compensation for her tongue-tied state. The European ladies ignored her once they found she spoke no English. She sees her kantha now, covering the hollow at Roop's neck, and she wants to press her thumbnail in that hollow until Roop's red blood spurts and drips over them both. She wants this. So that's another excerpt from What the Body Remembers. And this is What the Body Remembers, if you can see that. So I just wanted to mention that for me, the work of writing is a yoga, a practice, a capturing of those dreams I was talking about. And I can't force anyone to be interested in my story. So if you find it boring, you find it boring. Often, I don't know if what I'm writing will be interesting or not. I don't know if it will be a short story or a novel. It depends on whether I, as the storyteller, am asking my reader to peek into a window with me or join me in exploring many aspects of an issue. So that becomes a novel. But usually, when you begin a story and open up many questions in your reader's mind, you have to set about answering those questions. So here's the first part of my novel, The Tiger Claw, in which many questions are created, and hopefully the novel promises to answer them. So this is from The Tiger Claw, and I'll show you the cover here. This is the Tiger Claw. Can you see it? And this is from chapter 1. Now, this is set in Pforzheim, Germany, in December 1943. So we're jumping from undivided India, 1937, and we're going to Pforzheim, Germany, in December 1943. The Tiger Claw is the story of Noor Inayat Khan, a Muslim woman who was working as a spy for the British in World War II. So she is the last radio operator that the British had who was able to communicate with the Allies in World War II. And but for Noor Inayat Khan, the Allies would not have won World War II. Just so you know, a Muslim woman actually saved Europe. So this is her story, and this is from chapter 1 of The Tiger Claw. December moved in, taking up residence with Noor in her cell and freezing the radiator. Cold coiled in the bowl of her pelvis, turning shiver to quick as she lay beneath her blanket on the cot. Above, snow drifted against glass and bars. Shreds of thoughts, speculations, obsessions, some glue still held her fragments together. The flap door clanged down. Herr Vogel! The rest, in rapid German, was senseless. Silly hope reared inside. She reined it in. The guard placed something on the thick, jutting tray, something invisible in the dingy half-light. Soup, probably. She didn't care. She heard a clunk and a small swish. Yes, she did care. Noor rolled onto her stomach, chained wrists before her, supported her weight on her elbows, and knelt, then shifted to extend the chain running between her wrists and ankles far enough for her to be seated. The clanking weight of the leg irons pulled her bare feet to the floor. She slipped into prison clogs, shuffled across the cement floor. So that's a little excerpt from The Tiger Claw. And as you can see, Noor is in a cell by herself, and the guard is going to feed her through the cell door. Now, I could have said that to you in 2 sentences, but that's not interesting. What's more interesting is if you visualize it, if you come with me to see how she looks in that cell, how she sits up, and how she gets her feet to the ground despite the fact that she is in chains. So, as I said, I could have said that to you in 2 or 3 sentences, but it's much more interesting if you see it with me. Now, you might wonder, what is a Sikh woman doing, writing from the point of view of a Muslim woman? But that's the beauty of fiction. You can write across religions and cultures. You can be someone you are not. All you have to do is study books that people have written and interview people. I've now written as a Sikh, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Christian, and an atheist. What each character believed about the next life governed how they lived the present life. When I began writing the story of Noor Inayat Khan, I was appalled by how much I didn't know, particularly as I had several Muslim friends. How was it that I had never asked them questions? All I can do is hope that my interest and love for the characters will ignite the same in the reader, even the reader who found it very boring. Sometimes it takes years before readers are ready to hear what a writer has to say. Sometimes it takes decades before a writer is permitted to reveal secrets. You never know. So I hope you read and enjoy my stories, and I hope you will become dream machines, imagining all kinds of heroes and sheroes who will be similar to people you know, but not quite. And then I hope that you will leave your mark on the world by telling your stories. Thank you. Any questions? Let's talk.
Hello,
Yes?
ma'am, Shauna ma'am.
Yes?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes?
Ma'am, I am Meenu Butola and I am a research scholar from Kumaon University, Uttarakhand. So I have a
Well,
question that what I have got from your women characters is that they are loosely based on you as an individual. And being a hybrid, do you feel exactly like those characters like Anu and a kind of nowhere? Are you stuck in the land of nowhere? Thank you so much, ma'am.
am I stuck in the land of nowhere? Oh no, I don't think so. I'm right here. But I do have to set aside whatever I know about myself in order to become those people. So no, they're not loosely based on myself. I have never been in World War II. I have never been in the partition of India. I was never in 1937. I was never in 1943, in Europe. So this is they're not me. I wish I was like some of them. I wish I were as brave, for instance, as Noor Inayat Khan. I wish I were as um, just adventurous as some of my characters. But no, they're not based on me. Does that answer your question?
Probably, I think that the character, specifically in the selectors of Soul, I thought Anu slightly resembles from you. Because that character didn't wanted to have a child, and at the similarly you don't even have a child. So can you lighten me on this?
Sure. By the way, there are a lot of women who don't need to have children and don't want to have children and don't care about having children. Did you know that?
Yeah, ma'am, I know that.
Okay, good. I just wanted to establish that. Okay. So it unfortunately, having or not having children is not a choice that women are allowed to make by themselves. Okay. So for me, it's a very interesting point. Having grown up in India, okay, in the 70s, when everyone was telling you just how bad it was for Indian women to produce children, all right, and then your family was telling you that, oh, you have to get married and have children. There were mixed messages that were coming at me, as well as I know all of my friends. So if you are a woman, you can't win. If you don't have children, you're in the doghouse. If you do have children, you have too many. If you don't have if you have only one, then you have too few. If you have two, then you haven't got a third. There's always something wrong with you in relation to the number of children that you have. So no matter if you write about one woman or 20, you have to deal with the issue of reproduction. Otherwise, you're writing about a man.
Okay, ma'am, that's fine. So I want to ask you something about displacement, as displacement has many aspects, and you have, thrown up the light on each and every aspect of displacement. Specifically, if we talk about partition displacement, and if
Sure.
we also talk about job displacement and other things. So
Yeah.
can you throw a light on this?
Yeah, we are all displaced. I mean, especially now, aren't we? All of us are sitting at home, for example. We're all in lockdown. We're displaced from the public space. Now we know how it feels to be someone in prison. Now we know how it feels to be a woman in parda. Now we know how it feels to be incarcerated or uh, you know, or agoraphobic, for example. So displacement is a normal part of everybody's life. And we basically have to deal with that displacement no matter where we are. If you work at home, for example, then you're displaced from the public sphere. If you go to the store, you're displaced from your home. So no matter where you are, you're always displaced from somewhere.
Okay, ma'am, that's
Thank you.
fine. So do you
For
feel
your
any kind
question.
of
So we will have
nostalgia?
other questions. Participants. Meenu, thank you
Let's
so
have
much.
someone
There
else
are
ask a question.
other questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes,
Have a
thank you so
question.
much for your question, Meenu. We have Sunavya. We have who has a question, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. This is actually
Yes.
Soni. I wanted to ask, Shauna Didi talked about building up characters, right? So while building up characters, she said that if you do not relate to the character before you start working on it, and she said that we need to read books if we want to build up the characters. So I wanted to ask, what kind of reading is needed when we have to build up a character?
Okay, so there are many different things that you can use to get yourself inspired. Okay. There are times when, even for a very small character, you have to do a lot of reading. I think one of the most difficult characters that I ever wrote was a tiny character in The Selector of Souls. He was a Hindutva character, and I just couldn't relate to him. I had no way to get through to what did he feel like? What was he thinking? Why was he thinking that way? It was so foreign to me that I had to spend a lot of time on a very, very small character. He had a very small part in the book, but a very crucial part in the book. So for me, reading about the entire Hindutva movement, the ways in which they spoke, the ways in which they talked, the ways in which they were trained, the many different displacements that they have experienced in their lives, I had to find some form of sympathy, some little aspect, some one moment of empathy that I could relate to that character. And it is only when I found that through reading, through articles, through different books that I read, and one book that was the breakthrough for me on that particular character was a book called "Make Me a Man," and it was a book about masculinity. And no wonder I didn't understand that character. I didn't understand how a man is trained into masculinity from the day he is small, and how homophobic we are, and how we are training our men very young to be masculine in a way that we, we know how we train women, because I'm a woman, so I know how a woman is trained to be feminine. But what I didn't understand is how a man is trained to look down on women, to feel that they are weak, to understand them as the antithesis of masculinity. So that book was very helpful for me to just break through and get one little understanding, one little piece of empathy that I could take forward and say, all right, I can understand where this character is coming from.
Thank you.
I may not agree with the character, but I may understand the character,
Yes,
There's a
that is.
difference between understanding and agreeing with the character.
Sometimes you just can't relate, but then it's important for you to make that character a part of your book.
Yes, and a part of yourself also, because if you feel that sympathy, you're going to be able to come up with a better dialogue, for instance, even with that character or for that
Yeah,
character.
yeah, right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And
Thank
interviews
you,
also
Rana.
help,
Thank
by
you
the
for
way.
your question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have a question now from one of our students, Shahbaz. So,
Thank you.
Shahbaz, could you please unmute yourself? He has typed a question in the chat box, but I would prefer, Shahbaz, that you unmute yourself and put forward your question to Shauna, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Hello, Shabas. Hi.
Ma'am, basically, when I was going through your readings of English lessons,
Mhm.
I what inference I drew from it was one has to dream, and rather than being the empathetic about the subject of its characters, and exactly feeling the diaspora, whether it's unfortunately or for his own wishes, one has to be sympathetic. It means that one hasn't, did not be there when the genocide was there or something else. Am I right?
Yeah.
Because
Right. Yeah.
if I'm sitting in the confinement side of my room, I can still write about the lumberjacks of Canada itself.
Absolutely. Why not? You have imagination, you have research, you have books, and now you even have the net. You know, not that I would trust everything that's on there, but and that's one of the reasons I trust books more, because with books, you know that your work has to be edited and you have to think it through before you put it on the page, because it's going to stay there for a very long time. So that's why I trust books more than I trust the internet, simply because the internet is so changeable, you know. So yes, I can sit in my apartment in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and write about Pakistan. There's no problem. I can sit there and write about the Himalayas. There's no problem. It's all
Okay.
imagination and research and pretense in a certain way, but hopefully the empathy that allows a character, an actor to do it, is the same that allows a writer to do it.
Oh. So that basically means the world has
Thank
become
you
a
for your
global
question.
village.
Yep,
Global village.
it
So
is. Yeah, it is.
okay. Thank you, ma'am.
And
Thank you
you
Thank
very
you,
should do the
Shahbaz.
same. You should do the same. Just keep dreaming.
Okay. Looking forward to it, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Shahbaz, for your question. We have a question from Ghanishta Verma. Ghanishta, could you kindly unmute your question?
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, my
Hi, Kanishka.
question is
Hi, Kanishka.
thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is why it is always that women writing has been categorized as women writing, whereas male writing has never been categorized as male writing. Whenever a woman writes about her experiences or about experiences of others, she has to answer a lot many questions that why she wrote this, that she has gone through the same. But the same thing does not apply with the male writers. They do not have to answer the questions to that extent the way women writers have to. Why it is always that? Still we have to fight for our space, even when today we are saying that women are equal, women are everything, and still there is something lacking. It's not that world that we want. We still have to fight for our existence, whether it's literature or our life. Thank you, ma'am.
May I suggest to you that things are changing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And also, if it were easy, everybody would be doing this, right? And nothing that is worth doing is going to be easy. Nothing is going to be easy. Nobody's going to make it easy for you, right? So what we have to do is to say, all right, it's not easy for me in this particular way, but then it's not easy for a guy in some other particular way. For example, if a male writer tries to write about a woman, oh my God, do you think he can write about menstruation? He has no concept. He has no clue. He's got to talk to a woman. even that's difficult. And so my point is that everyone has a certain lack, a certain area in which they are ignorant, and a certain area in which they are an expert. So we all have different strengths and different weaknesses, and it's only reading and talking to each other that's going to fix that. But if you start from saying, oh my God, it's too difficult, and the world is set against me, we're never going to make progress. We're just going to have to work a little harder to make sure that we get our voices heard. And I mean, publishing has changed mainly because a lot of women are in publishing. And we have to make space for other women. I mean, for example, it's not enough for me to write books. I also need to mentor new writers, right? As I get up the chain of command type of thing, or further along the journey, or whatever you want to call it, it should be that I turn around and pull somebody else up with me. And that's what your teachers do. That's what people who are further down the path do. That's what your elders do. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and it should be your hope in life, that someone gives you a leg up and says, you can do it. And I say, you can do it. And hope in life, that someone gives you a leg up and says, you can do it. And I say, you can do it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
We have another question. Thank you for your question, Ghanishta. We have another question from Payal Singh. So Payal, can you unmute?
Yes, yes. Yes,
Payal
ma'am.
Singh?
Yes.
Hi,
Good
Payal.
morning. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Good
Very
morning,
much.
everyone. Good morning, Shauna, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, I was very touched by your text, and I loved the intrinsic details which were there in the text. They were quite relatable, and it spoke emphatically. My question to you is that can you please enlighten and inspire us by elaborating on how your journey as a creative writer began?
Well, for me, I began very early, like about 9 or so, and I just felt like I needed to hold on to the moment and describe the moment that I was in at the time and find words for it. So I kept a little journal, a teeny weeny notebook, in which I just described the color of the carpet, let's say, or the feel of the fan on my face, the speed at which a car goes, something like that. There were so many beautiful moments that I just wanted to hold on to. And so my little writer's notebook became my first way of holding on to the moment and just describing the moment. I don't know where those notebooks are anymore, but I certainly think that it helped me to just assign names to ideas and adjectives to certain things. As you get older, people keep telling you to do business writing and everything, and I did a BCom honors, so I did business writing very early in my career, which means that you lose all your adjectives. And if you do some marketing work, you'll keep your superlative adjectives, but you won't keep anything else. All right? You'll only keep the adjectives that are pretty and nice. And you'll keep words like tremendous and fantastic and wonderful, words that say absolutely nothing. But if we are to communicate, to really communicate with each other, we have to find words that are better than fantastic and nice and great and wonderful. The words that say nothing. We have to find words that communicate from our hearts, from one heart to the other. And I think that my first writing was a book of nonfiction. It was called A Foreign Visitor's Survival Guide to America. It was a how-to book. But in writing nonfiction, I didn't have to set myself aside. It's only when I started writing fiction that I had to actually set my own self aside and become somebody else. And that is the fun of writing fiction. It is also the fun of reading fiction, that you don't have to be yourself when you're reading fiction, right? So I fell in love with actually writing stories. And I started doing that when I was about 12 or 13. And I was much better at it when I was 12 or 13 and I wasn't so self-conscious about things. I had to regain that confidence, when I was a little older. So when you're 11, 12, 13, as a girl, you're at your most confident. And I must say that was so for me. And then you lose confidence as you go into puberty and you go into menstruation and get into your 20s. And the whole pressure comes about marriage and dating or whatever culture you happen to be in. Then reproduction and all those pressures come. So at that point, there's a lot of loss of confidence and energy at that point for women. And I think I regained that much later after I got married and decided, no, that's where my energy was going to go.
Thank you.
So I had a radio show.
Shauna ma'am, this is Yaya here.
Anji.
A few days ago, when we were talking about this program and event, you referred to a play of yours, and the play titled "We Are So Different Now."
Yes, yes.
In the last days, I was referring to that play, and sort of reading a bit from here and from there.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very simple question. That since you are known across the world as a writer of fiction, and certainly a very valuable and a very great fiction, I wish to know that what you experienced and felt like when you were writing a play. So your experience as a novelist, a fiction writer,
yeah,
and your experience of switching over to writing a play.
Playwriting, yeah. That's a good question. I find that playwriting is much easier because you don't have to describe everything. In a novel, you have to describe everything. It's actually, writing a novel is probably the most difficult thing that a human being can do. And that's why a computer cannot do it right now. Right now. Remember, I mean, a computer might be able to do it later on, but right now, a computer cannot write a novel. I don't know if a computer can write a play, but for a computer to write a story is very difficult. So if you look at the information content of a short story versus a novel is the most information content you can have. A short story is probably in the middle, and a play is much less in terms of information content. So a play is mostly the dialogue, very few stage instructions or anything like that. Short story, you might add a little bit more detail and information. And a novel, of course, you have to explain just about everything. So from the standpoint of ease, I think it was much easier to write a play, at least for me.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a question from Dr. Sanjay Yadav in the chat box. So Dr. Yadav, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello?
Not available. Hello? Dr. Sanjay Yadav, are you available? If not, I have a question of my own, Shauna ma'am. I have also been visiting your Facebook posts where you talk about how, during this lockdown, the Sikhs in Toronto have been extending help to the community. And I saw in one of your posts, you mentioned that many parts of Toronto are, interacting so intimately with Sikhs for the first time. So how
not Toronto. May I correct? Not Toronto. I was talking about Milwaukee, where I live.
Yes.
I live in the US. Yes. So, yeah.
Okay.
So in Toronto, they have probably interacted with Sikhs
that
a lot more.
This particular. Okay. So how do you think that, this identity as, this identity, the Sikh identity, which also, resurfaces in all your works? For example, that short story where you were reading out, her kind of, the way she talks about the turbans and the feel that, that brings, it's a kind of homecoming for her to even wash and handle a turban. So how do you think, that Sikh identity manifests itself in your life and your work?
Well, the Sikhs have both the Hindu and Muslim elements in our Guru Granth Sahib. For example, we have 34 different saints who are quoted in the Guru Granth Sahib, and so I have a good, I guess, understanding of the Muslim ones as well as the Hindu ones. So if I write as a Hindu or if I write as a Muslim, all I have to do is actually suppress that one side of myself, because the Sikh faith is a syncretic faith that takes from both faiths and goes forward in a third way. So it's much more difficult perhaps for me to write as a Christian or as an atheist. So, I mean, I don't know how to be anything other than a Sikh, because that's how I was raised, But I do know that I have to read a lot and have to understand a lot and have to really research a lot in order to write as anybody different. So I don't know, just I've never been anything else, so I don't know how it feels to be somebody else. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. We have Dr. Sanjay Yadav is back with us. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Sanjay, if you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible now?
Yes, hi.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, hi, Shauna, ma'am. Yeah, I missed the early part of your lecture, but when I got connected, I heard that you were saying that you do not make any special effort to get along the readers, with your story. So I wanted to have a peek into an author's mind. What goes into the mind of an author when he is creating a story? Does the author have readers in mind? Just as a film producer, when he produces a film, he has the audience in mind. Of course, the artistic concerns are there. So my question was, does the artistic concern prevail over the ultimate consumers of the art which you create?
Yes and no, because you're always writing as just for yourself, and then you're reading as a reader, right? Also, our audience is now so undefined. It's global. Nobody can tell you who your reader is going to be. So to say, I'm going to think about my reader, I have no idea who that person is, So I can only say that I probably write and then edit afterwards to consider the reader afterwards as an editor. But I don't consider the reader as much when I'm writing, because I have to consider the character and how that character would react and how the character looks and everything. So the reader comes second to that. I think second to that, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Character first, yeah.
I see. And to what extent do you, to what extent do you identify yourself with the characters that you create? Because I was reading Arundhati Roy's statement about the second novel which she wrote, the what? Let me see I just forgot the name. The Ministry of Utmost Happiness, and the publisher had come to her and she said, no, let me, they wanted to make her some changes in the story, and she said, no, let me ask my characters. So she was so much into the characters which she had created. I would like to know.
Yeah, they're real.
Yeah, so I would like to know your reaction, to what extent you get into the
Oh,
characters
I
which you
agree with her.
create.
To me, they're people, and Arundhati is absolutely
Yeah.
right. They're
Yeah.
people, and you have to consult them, and they have rights just as anybody else. And if they're based on real people, then those people also have rights, And there's a certain ethics of writing in that if you have based it on somebody, then you should also have them read it to make sure that they are okay with what you're saying, So I did that recently with a short story that I wrote, and I ran it by the gentleman on whose life it was based. And I said, how do you like it? He says, well, he's not me, but he's like me. So I think it's art.
I know.
And so you never know how the person is going to react, whether it's the reader or the person who you think it's based on. My experience is that people think that it's about them when it's not about them, and they think that it's not about them when it is about them. So
I know.
so that's the relationship to real life. But for me, the characters become real in themselves. And so yes, I'm going to resist anybody telling me how the character should act or how the character should speak, because that's my prerogative as the writer.
Absolutely.
Can I?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Basu,
Thank you, Sanjay, for
my
your question. Yes,
yeah.
yes, we have Dr. Tiari, our colleague, who has a question for us. Yes, ma'am.
Not exactly question, ma'am. You have talked about dreaming, the stage which comes when you are creating world for your story or for your fiction, and it is
Yes.
related with your characterization. So I just wanted to know that where this observation part comes. Uh, bec- when you have the observation of the world, when you have the observation of the characters, the real characters, then
Yes.
only I think in the second stage this dreaming comes. So can you just clarify this, that how this
I think that when you dream at night, right, it's usually based on what your subconscious and your conscious are coming together with. So yes, it's probably based on something you saw during the day. Maybe it's
right?
based on something you read during the day. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
You don't know where these images come from.
Mhm.
Your job as a writer is not to question where those images came from. Your job is to use them. That's it. It's like, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. If you are seeing something beautiful and interesting and different and something that intrigues you, just go with it. That's what'll make it interesting for the reader. Your interest is going to make it interesting for the reader.
Thank you so much. Very well
You're
answered.
welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neha, ma'am. We have some more questions from our students. Shauna, ma'am, can you take them on?
Sure. Are we running
We
out of
have
time though? We may be running out
Yes,
of time. Or
yes.
no?
So Ayush Kumar has a question. Ayush, I would ask you to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Hello.
perfectly.
Yeah, good morning, ma'am. I'm Ayush from Karim City
Yes,
College,
Ayush.
semester one, English department. Ma'am, my question is regarding writing in general. I just wanted to ask how much of writing is research and how much of it is imagination. I mean, there's this, yeah, this idea has been kicking around for a while. I
Yeah.
wanted to write something in magical realism space, much on the lines of Gabriel Garcia Marquez or, for that matter, Neil Gaiman. But the problem is that, ma'am, I don't know how much I have to be factually correct and how much of my imagination I have to throw in. So please throw some light on it, ma'am. Thank you.
My only ethical issue on that one is don't change history. Okay? Because a lot of people get their history from novels.
Yeah.
So I would not be the kind of person who would say, oh, put the Gandhi Salt March into 1945. It didn't take place in 1945. So please don't do that to us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So from my standpoint, that's the only thing that I would say, please don't do that, right? But
Yeah.
as far as imagination and research, I have no idea when one stops and the other begins, because after a lot of reading, you start to see those characters and you start to imagine those characters wherever the setting was and whatever the times were. And because of your research, you can begin to dream as the characters. And you can
Sure.
even get a character's dream. Not only can you dream the characters, but you can get a character's dream. So there's no midpoint, there's no fine line, nothing like that. My only request is please don't change history.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And just a follow-up question, ma'am. Probably you get this one a lot. How to get to a writer's block? I don't know. I
Oh,
mean,
you just
what?
need to read. You just need to read, and
Yeah,
you just need to be interested. And
yeah.
and the other thing is, please don't write when you're tired,
Okay.
because I think that writing is a transfer of energy from yourself to the reader. So if you have no energy, how are you going to give it, right?
Yeah,
So please don't do it when you're really tired or something. And that's why a lot of writers get up early morning and they write at that time.
yeah, yeah.
The Amrit Vela is there for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. We have a question from Avantika. Avantika, if you could unmute yourself and put forward your question.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, Avantika.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
I'm Avantika Kushwaha from Semester 1 English Department.
Achha.
I have a question in initial stage of writing, which aspects is help us to improve our writing?
Sorry, say that again.
In initial stage of writing.
Please repeat your question.
In initial stage of writing, which aspects is help us to improving our writings?
Well, as I said, dreaming
How
helps
can
you
we
improve your
improve?
writing, but also reading, and also I think memory, because when you think about what is the story that only you could write, then you start to fall back on your own memories, your parents' memories, your grandparents' memories, and that is what gives your writing the depth that it needs. Memory is what gives writing a certain depth and a certain wisdom as well. So rely on memory as much as you rely on imagination. And if you're only 18, 19, 20 years old, doesn't matter. You've got the memories of your parents. You've got the memories of your grandparents. Go interview them. See what
Yeah, ma'am.
sparks
Thank
your
you, ma'am.
imagination. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Avantika, for your question. We have a question
Yeah, ma'am.
from
Thank you.
Ashi Sinha. Ashi, if you yourself. We have a question from Ashi Sinha. Ashi, if you're available, could you unmute yourself and ask your question? If not, we will go to Aarti Jha. Aarti Jha has a question. Yes, Ashi Sinha. Yes,
Hello, good
Ashi.
morning.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Ma'am, good morning, ma'am. I'm really impressed with your reading. Ma'am, actually, I want to know that every day we are experiencing something new. Okay. So, the base for a short story could be some few sentences that.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing this question.
Yes, you're not very audible, Ashi. Shona, what she wants?
Perhaps
she has typed out her question in the chat box.
Yeah. What is the
Yes, yes, she has typed it out in the chat box. She has written that if is it possible for us to describe our experiences? Could we use our experiences as the basis for short stories? Is basically, I think, what Ashi wants to ask. If we could use our everyday experience basis.
Yeah. Absolutely. There are no rules. Okay. Nobody is giving anybody any rules. And if they do, please break them. Okay. I mean, even the rule that I gave you about juggling dates and stuff. I mean, I was just thinking about it as I spoke. Bapsi Sidhwa does this. She juggles dates, as she says, and there's nothing. I mean, if that's okay for her, it's okay, So I think everybody has a personal set of rules, and you make your own as you go along. There's certain things I may not do, but you might do, but there's no authority. Who is there who's telling us to do this or not do it in the first place, right? Nobody's saying do it. And it's a much easier thing to just read what somebody else does. Let me tell you, this is not an easy thing to do. So it's much easier to sit and read what somebody else has written than to write it. So nobody's asking you to do it, so there are no rules. And if a critic is there and telling you, it's usually the critic that's in your forehead, and you have to silence that one.
Very true. Thank you for your question, Ashi. We have a question from Aarti Jha who wants you to throw some light on the significance of your title, What the Body Remembers. Artija?
I don't know if you've read the novel or not, but the novel is set in colonial India, and it takes you through the partition of India. And what the body remembers is very much based on what men's bodies remember, and then what women's bodies remember, and it's different. And then what the body remembers from the partition is another aspect of that. The name of the protagonist in What the Body Remembers is Roop, and Roop means body. So what the body remembers is also what Roop remembers. And of course, what Roop remembers is what she's told to remember. So there are many aspects of that title, and I can't even say that it was really difficult to come up with. It came to me in a dream. So. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Shauna, ma'am, I would like to ask you, because this is something which it's very similar to what Yahya sir asked you. Somehow, there is a hierarchy between what we call the short story and what we call the novel. So there's always a hierarchy in that. Novel is the older sibling, and the short story is the lesser, less important, sibling to it. So because as a fiction writer, you have wonderfully employed both these genres.
Yeah.
What would be your take, how easy or difficult is it to write a short story as compared to a novel? And how much or how less does it say about what you want to say? So as a vehicle of expression, and also as, in writing, how does the short story relate to the novel?
Well, if you think about it, a short story is a window into a subject. And for me, a novel is a marathon. First of all, it is the most difficult thing, and that's why we say, you got to write the great Indian novel, you got to write the great American novel, you got to write the great Canadian novel. People say that because it's the most difficult thing you can do, right? But a short story can be very difficult too. I have written some short stories that have taken me 10 years to come out, that have taken 10 years to come out of me. I've written a novella that's taken, I would say, 4 years to actually come to that level where I was feeling that it was sufficient, So I think the subject determines the form, not the other way around. Not that, I'm going to write a short story. I don't say, I'm going to write a novel. I say, I'm going to tell a story. And whatever that story happens to turn out into is what it becomes. So if a short story turns into a novella, then it's a novella. If a novella turns into a novel, well, then good, it's a novel, So how much energy do you want to put into it so that you can explore all the different aspects of those situations? That's the question. And does every character have their say? And does every character impact the plot? So there are many different aspects that go into how long something becomes, and it's just a matter of length. The question is, do you tell the story okay? So I don't look at whether I'm going to write a short story, a novel, a poem even. There's some poems that I've written that have taken probably 2 or 3 years to write. And there are others that have
So the form is something you believe a writer cannot determine? You believe that the genre is not, it cannot be determined by the writer? It has its own, it develops in its own way. Is that what?
No, I don't think that.
Like to
I don't
say?
think that it's sitting out there and wants to be a short story, and sitting out there and it wants to be a novel. No, I think that the amount of exploration that you want to do of the subject determines the length, and that's a different thing from the deconstructionist idea that the author is not responsible for this. The author is very much responsible, in my book.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, can I?
So, ma'am, do we have for more questions? Yes, Saket has a question. Please, Saket.
Hello, ma'am. In What the Body Remembers, you talk about polygamy and partition. What are your experiences, ma'am, when a writer writes and the books which are being published, and you're talking about all these matters, it is not an easy task actually. But when these things comes in public domain, you also get positive as well as negative things from people. What are your experiences like?
Well, the criticism usually tells you more about the criticizer than about your novel. That's my experience with it. Because anybody who's critiquing has a certain level of reading, they have a certain experience with the subject. They don't have your experience. So it really doesn't matter what they say, so long as they provide context for a reader. I think they're doing a great job as a critic. Okay. So if they don't like it or they liked it or whatever, I don't really care whether they liked it or they didn't like it. I care if a critic provides context for a reader so that the reader gets more out of the book from reading the criticism. And I can't be sensitive about the criticism. I really can't. Or I'd never.
Vasundhara, I have a question.
Yes, Uma ma'am. Please.
Actually, ma'am was talking about that how the in her novel What the Body Remembers, how the male body and the female body, how there is a difference between what they remember and what they have felt during the partition and all of that. So I essentially want to know how the male sensibility and the female sensibility as a writer, as a creative writer, how they differ, and besides that, how there is so much of violence against women in the society, and why it is that it has not been taken up by the creative writers in that way. And of course, ma'am has written in her Selector of Souls, there's this issue of female infanticide. But I want to know what really stops the female writers from taking up these issues and writing about them
Very,
in that way.
very good question. Very, very good question. I'm really glad you asked it, because when I was writing the Selector of Souls, I had to throw out something like 300 pages and start over. And the reason is that when you write about domestic violence, the last thing you want to do is to turn the reader into a voyeur of violence. And the problem with domestic violence is that it's a cycle. And it's a continuous cycle, and it continues on, and it doesn't stop. And so what are you going to do? You're going to record one incident after the other incident after the other incident. That's not fun for the reader to read, first of all, and it is not ethical from the writer's standpoint, I think, to turn the reader into a voyeur of violence. That's not what you're trying to do. So the story only begins, I found, at least in the Selector of Souls, the story only begins when the woman decides to leave in that book. And the story only begins when the woman decides to take action. So, and that happens also, Anna Quindlen wrote a book called Black and Blue, and I read that before starting, and I thought, oh my God, she's hit something over there, because her story also only starts when the woman actually takes action, because then she becomes with agency. Otherwise, she's a passive victim, and we don't want to see that. There's no fun in it. Not only there's no fun in it, there's no ethical, there's no ethical value in it as a reader.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. Yes, definitely. So essentially, you want to say that how when you write such or maybe showing women in that sort of a scenario will deter them, or rather will not give them any sort of strength. So it's essential to show them in a positive light. That is what essentially your.
No, it's not positive. None of these things are necessarily positive. Okay, so I don't want to show somebody in a positive light. I just want to know when they start to act. When they start to act, that's when you get a story. If they don't act and they keep taking the crap that they get, okay, that's not a story.
Okay.
A story is something that happens because something else happens, because something else happens, because something else happens. And you can't start that chain of events unless somebody actually takes action.
Okay, okay. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That was a wonderful question, and we had a wonderful answer, which threw a lot of light on your fiction. So thank you, Mama.
Basu, can I ask a question?
Yes, yes, Dash sir.
But
We have a question from Dash sir.
uh, good morning, ma'am. I have a question which relates to predicament of a creative writer. Sometimes it so happens that a writer has designed a character to move in a particular pattern with a particular shade. But as the story moves on, what he finds that he's constantly reinventing the character, reinventing the character, so much so when the story comes to an end, we find the character in a completely different shade. So in such a situation, how to address this situation, or should the writer allow it to happen? This is my question.
Well, it depends on the function of the character. I mean, there are certain forms of writing in which the character does not change. Okay, so for example, if you watch Seinfeld or a TV series or something like that, you don't want the character to change. It's just their situations change, but they don't change in terms of learning anything or changing the way they act, right? Whereas if you're writing a novel or a short story, hopefully the character should change. Either the reader changes or the character changes, one or the other. And if the reader doesn't change, if you have not changed the reader, you should have changed the character. And if none of the three have changed, neither the reader, the character, nor the situation, then why read it?
Okay. So the character may keep on changing, no harm.
Absolutely not.
If the
You
author
want
so
the character
likes.
to learn something so that the reader learns something, right? But if the character, the reader, or the situation do not change, then there's no point writing.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Just my feeling on that. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dash
very
sir, for
much.
your question. Yes, I have something to say.
Yes, yes. Shauna ma'am, I hope that this is the last question of the session. And it is a jumbled question from my side. In the previous few years, we have seen a great surge in writing and publication of fiction. Whereas the other art forms, for example, drama, for example, poetry, there is a bit of a decline. I can remember a very important Urdu critic saying in the last century, the last decade of the last century, an Urdu critic, Muzaffar Hanafi, has said that the coming century will be a century of fiction. So he was making a prophecy those days, those years. And I feel that his prophecy has come true because, yes, we are witnessing a great and huge surge in fiction. So do you really feel that there is a decline in other literary forms? And if they are, how we can even work for the surge of those art forms? There is one question. And another is that very recently we have witnessed a new form of fiction coming up, which is called a nano stories or nano stories. So what is your take on that nano stories also, please?
Well, flash fiction or nano stories are very, very short stories, right? And they have a place. They've always been around. Ernest Hemingway wrote some flash fiction as well. It's not it's a fun thing to do, just like haiku is a fun thing to do, but I disagree with you in that I don't think that there's simply a falling away of any art form. There's no falling away. I think they have they come and go as we need them. Like right now, in terms of the lockdown, do you know how much poetry is coming out? It's amazing. People are writing and consuming poetry in many different ways. There are poetry readings that are taking place online and everything. So you can't say necessarily that poetry is declining. Meanwhile, I don't think that fiction is going up in the United States. It is going up in India. It is coming to the fore in India, but not in the United States, because it's getting harder and harder for men to put themselves into other voices in their heads. They Men are not reading fiction as much in the United States, and that is because they really don't like other people's voices in their heads. So we have to get
Okay.
fiction back into form in the US. Mind you, it's increasing in India. So it's different parts of the world have different surges on this at different times.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Bashu, shall we end the session now?
Yes, Shauna ma'am. So there is no end to questions. We have many more questions, I think. It all depends upon, I think you are already past
I
bedtime.
think it's a little late, yeah.
Yes,
So thank
yes,
you
because
very
it's
much.
night over there. Yes, what time is it, Shauna ma'am, at your end?
It is 11:51, so almost midnight.
Imagine she is awake till midnight just because of us, and I think this is a big privilege on our part, and we are sorry and happy to have taxed you, ma'am. And
Thank you so much for the time. Yeah.
It was wonderful listening to you, and this is an experience for a lifetime. I doubt that at least any of us over here in this particular chat room would have had the privilege of listening to you live, because we are, geographical backward part of the world. We are in a
Not at
third
all.
world.
You are in an
We are in a
amazing
third world
place. Yeah.
state, for that
No,
matter.
you're not.
So
No, you're
it
not.
would not have been possible but for Yaya sir and for you, and for the generosity that you have shown us. So thank you so much for
Thank you
being
so
with
much for
us.
your interest as readers, and for spending the time on my books. Thanks.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
There's a lot of love coming from our students for you in the chat box. So I hope you read their messages before signing off.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. Take
Thank
care.
you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thanks a
Have
lot.
a
Thanks. Thank you.
Yes. So
Thank you,
with
ma'am.
this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to
Thank
the
you,
end of
ma'am.
our section. And the recording will be live and up on YouTube. We'll share it on Facebook. We'll share it with Shauna ma'am and with all of you. And thank you for being such a wonderful audience. And of course, we were mesmerized because the speaker was so mesmerizing. So we cannot thank her enough for this. Thank you so much. Signing off for today.
Signing off. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Students are requested to stay back, semester 1, 3, and 6.
Kareem City College English Department students, you have your classes to plan after this. So you will stay back, meeting with your head. The others, we are very thankful to you for having been with us. And we will hopefully, as Yaya sir directs, we will hopefully continue this Writers Beyond Distance. Yaya sir?
Yes.
What? So we will hopefully continue this Writers Beyond Distance.
We will keep on inviting.
Yeah, we will continue. We'll surely continue. I'll not take much of the time of the students. I just want to say 2 or 3 things. One is for the semester 6 people, and that is tomorrow or even today itself, you will find the guidelines, the detailed guidelines on your mail, which Neha ma'am and the department has prepared. So we have finished editing and finalizing it. So soon we will send it to you on your mail. Neha ma'am has also planned to put that guidelines on the website of the college also. So you can have it from there also. I think that your time will begin from first. We will start counting your time from the 1st of June. Okay? In the meanwhile, your supervisors will be in your contact. Try to finish your first draft with the consultation of your supervisor.
Your
Finalize.
voice is cracking.
Okay. Finalize. Is it right now? Is it? Huh. So finalize your first draft with the supervisors, and try to finish your project as soon as possible, because after that you may have your semester 5 examinations also.
So this is one thing. Another thing is that some of us are planning to have a few sessions on Google Meet with semester 6. So we will inform you. Of course, we'll share the link and we'll inform you in due course of time. But we will certainly have some sessions on Google Meet. The third thing that I would like to say to semester 6 is that if you are preparing for semester 5 and if you are studying for semester 6 together, if you have any area of concern, any topic to be clarified, any doubt to be clarified, you are free to ask us in our WhatsApp group. You can WhatsApp us in our personal WhatsApp number also. And even you can mail us also if there is any kind of query. If there is any specific note or any specific guideline or any specific study material needed from any one of us, feel free to ask us. We will be happy to provide and we'll be happy to arrange